do you believe people who've never heard of Jesus go to hell? It feels quite unjust that someone might not have had the chance to read the Bible, to go to church, to hear anything about Jesus, and yet knows the exclusive claims of Jesus. He's the only way, to new life. How would you go about sort of, thoughts on that? It doesn't quite feel just.
Yeah, again, that's a huge question. And it kind of, most of my family are not Christians and never have been. Didn't come from a particularly devout Christian family or home or anything like that. So I wrestle with this question of, what would it be like for them to meet their Creator one day? Let alone people from far-flung corners of the world who maybe never heard of Christianity or read a Bible or had that opportunity. So this is a personal issue for me in one sense. And I keep having to say to myself a couple of things just to settle me in one sense. And the first one is, do I believe that we need justice in this world? And the answer I, of course, keep coming back to is saying yes. Every wrong must be righted in some form or another. So again, the alternative, Dawkins, I don't want to caricature him, but I want to recognize the reality of what sits behind those words. No evil, no good. Because you could also therefore add to that, therefore no justice. So can I believe that actually some people get lucky in the sense that they get away with horrific crimes? Hitler's willing executioners in Auschwitz, some of whom never got caught. Will they face any judgment for that? And I kind of believe and have to believe as a Christian that there is a God who will right every wrong, finally. So there has to be justice, I think. And we all, our hearts cry out for justice. And we won't get it in this world, some of us. So I think my heart says, yes, that God is a God who will one day bring judgment. And the second one is, do I believe that God, as I know him and as revealed in the Bible, that God will only do that which is right? In other words, he's not a moral monster. He's not a vengeful being. He wants to not only do justice, but see that justice is done and done in the right way. And again, I have to say, look, there's a lot I don't understand about what that judgment day will be like for some people, but I believe he's just, and his justice will be seen to be just, because God has revealed himself as a moral being, a God who is holy and a God who is loving. So hell does mean for some, finally, separation from God and all that is good. That is what hell is. It's separation from God and all that is good. And so when Jesus said on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? That is Jesus saying, I am going through hell on this cross. God forsaken us. The wrath of God being poured out on Jesus on that cross. And what that shows me is that Jesus, who said that he came into the world to save sinners, was willing to go through hell on that cross so that you and I might not have to experience that for ourselves. So God is not only a God of justice who will see that judgment is done, but God is a God who's willing to bear that penalty upon himself on the cross so that we might not have to. So that literally the man who was crucified alongside Jesus, that thief on the cross, said to Jesus, as he lay dying in agony alongside Jesus, he said, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said to that man, who was no doubt a scoundrel and a thief and a rotter who'd done nothing good in his life, he said to that man, today you will be with me in paradise. So Jesus went through hell on the cross so that people who simply seek their forgiveness through him, that they may experience that forgiveness and see their eternity change forever from hell to heaven. So for those of us who have heard of the name of Jesus, for those of us who have a Bible that we can read for ourselves, ultimately, whether or not we go to heaven or hell is in our hands. We can either say yes to God and that offer forgiveness or no. So for those of us who've heard about Jesus, the responsibility kind of falls back on us in a big way. because we're not going to be able to say to God on the last day, oh, I had no idea you were God. Jesus, who was Jesus? Why? Do you see what I mean? So I think that's why we need to take these evenings and these questions really seriously. There's a lot at stake. For those who haven't heard of Jesus, and that of course over human history will be many people, I think ultimately we don't know and can't know what Judgment Day will look like for them. So for example, if someone just cried out in an Amazonian rainforest, God have mercy on me, because I know that I have failed to live up to my own standards, let alone the standards of the God who has made me, will that be enough to save them? If they've never had a chance to hear Jesus, but they simply say, have mercy, will that be enough? You know, I don't know. And Christians actually wrestle with that question a lot. The way in which we can be sure that someone will cross from hell to heaven is if they have a chance to hear and respond to Jesus, which is why we go around the world talking to people about Jesus, because that's when you can be sure. But there'll be lots of people who will meet Jesus as their judge, and we know that Jesus will only judge them rightly. And we know that the only way in which we can cross from hell to heaven is if we seek that forgiveness. If someone's not heard of Jesus and cries out to the God who has made them to have mercy on them, have they put their faith in Jesus? Some Christians think that they didn't know him by name, but that's the effect. They were seeking forgiveness from the God who made them, and maybe that's enough. We don't know, but that's not our situation tonight. We are those who've heard and can respond.